Sophie Cunningham body slammed to the floor. It's the same girl that kneed Caitlin Clark in the groin. Hence why we're in this situation right now.
Sophie Cunningham was flat out targeted by a dirty, dirty player.
The WNBA has just been rocked by one of its darkest moments yet.
Oh, and Cunningham is down. My goodness.
Sophie Cunningham went crashing to the floor, clutching her knee in agony, and in that instant, the entire arena froze. Fans gasped, teammates rushed to her side, and what should have been just another game turned into a scene that will haunt this league for a long time. Sophie wasn't just down, she was in tears, unable to get back up. And within seconds, a storm of outrage was unleashed. All eyes turned to one name: Bria Hartley.
Bria Hartley is the same girl. Bria Hartley is the same woman that pulled Angel Reese out of there by her ponytail. This is the same woman we're talking about.
A player with a reputation for reckless fouls, wild plays, and dangerous collisions. Critics didn't hesitate to call her dirty. Some went even further, insisting this wasn't an accident at all, that Sophie had been deliberately targeted. The idea spread like wildfire, that this was more than bad luck. This was a hit job.
Who would have thought Sophie Cunningham out for the year? How can this team continue to survive? We bring in Eric McDonald because of injuries, and who would have thought?
But here's the thing. This injury didn't just take Sophie out of the game. It ripped open something much bigger. Suddenly, the Indiana Fever were branded as cursed. Fans were calling the season a disaster. Teammates looked broken, and Sophie's family was furious, demanding the league take action.
Maybe you should focus less on fining players for commenting on your poor officiating and more about hiring officials that are able to call a consistent game and protect your athletes. Pathetic. Praying for you, so Fowler.
And this is only the beginning. Because Sophie's fall wasn't an isolated event. It exposed a broken league, where stars are getting hurt week after week and nobody is stepping in to protect them. From dirty plays to missed calls, from family outrage to fan boycotts, this is the story that could change the WNBA forever. So before we dive in, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, or the refs might start officiating your life the way they've been calling these games. Stick around, because what comes next will leave you stunned. It was supposed to be just another game, another chance for the Fever to prove they were turning things around. But in a single moment, everything collapsed.
It looks like she might have either ruptured her patella.
Sophie Cunningham hit the hardwood clutching her knee, her face twisted in pain, and the entire arena went silent. The players froze, the coaches looked on in disbelief, and fans instantly knew this wasn't something she could just shake off. This was serious. Lexi Hall dropped to her knees beside her teammate, desperately waving for trainers. Across the bench, Stephanie White looked like she'd just witnessed the season slip through her hands. Sophie wasn't just a role player. She was energy, defense, and leadership all wrapped into one. Without her, the Fever were losing far more than points on the board. But the injury itself wasn't the only thing that stunned people. It was how quickly the conversation shifted to intent. Within minutes, social media was ablaze with accusations. Fans were furious, pointing directly at Bria Hartley. Words like reckless, dirty, and dangerous dominated timelines. Some fans even claimed this wasn't just a bad collision. It was a deliberate attempt to take Sophie out of the game. That suspicion ignited something much bigger, because this wasn't Hartley's first controversial moment on the court, and for many people, it felt like the final straw.
Do you think the refs called anything? Do you think the refs called any fouls? No, they didn't. These refs are clowns. These referees are clowns.
Sophie's injury became more than just a painful blow to the Fever. It became the spark that exposed just how fragile and chaotic this WNBA season had already become. And as Sophie was helped off the floor, tears streaming down her face, one thing became clear. This wasn't just a setback for the Fever. It was the beginning of a storm that would drag the entire league into controversy. Before Sophie's fall, the Indiana Fever were already fighting through what fans had started calling a season from hell. Embarrassing losses piled up week after week. Blowouts that looked more like scrimmages than professional games. The chemistry was gone, the leadership was absent, and every time it seemed like they might build momentum, another disaster struck. The locker room didn't look united. On the court, they were often disorganized, running into each other, missing assignments, and failing to close out games. Fans who once believed in the rebuild were now openly mocking the team, saying they looked more like a reality show than a professional roster. And the sad truth, they weren't wrong. Stephanie White, normally composed, could be seen fighting back emotion during press conferences, frustrated at the lack of consistency. Players were visibly defeated, their body language screaming what the scoreboard already showed. This team wasn't just struggling, they were unraveling. And then came Sophie's injury, the blow that ripped away the little hope the Fever had left. It wasn't just about losing one player, it was about losing the heartbeat of the team. Without her, the Fever didn't just look weak, they looked doomed. For fans, it was confirmation of what they had feared all along. This wasn't going to be a tough season, it was going to be a nightmare. And when Sophie's family began voicing their anger, that nightmare took on a whole new dimension. Because this wasn't just about losing games anymore. It was about a league failing to protect its players. And Sophie's family wasn't about to stay silent. When Sophie went down, the injury alone was devastating. But what happened next took the story to another level. Her family didn't hold back, and their voices carried the anger that every fan was already feeling. Her sister Lindsay lit up social media, calling out the WNBA for its failure to protect players. She wasn't subtle. She accused the league of focusing more on silencing players and handing out fines than actually keeping its athletes safe. Fans instantly rallied behind her, retweeting and amplifying her message. It wasn't just frustration anymore, it was outrage that spread like wildfire. Then came Sophie's mother, Paula, and she took it even further. Paula called Bria Hartley a repeat offender, a player who had developed a reputation for wrecking careers. She said this wasn't an accident, this was a pattern. She warned that every time Hartley stepped on the floor, someone was at risk of getting hurt. And coming from a mother watching her daughter leave the court in tears, those words hit hard. For fans, it was powerful. Families rarely speak out this directly, but Lindsay and Paula's raw honesty struck a nerve. If the people closest to the players didn't trust the league to protect them, why should anyone else? Their anger wasn't just personal, it became a rallying cry. The story was no longer about a team losing a key player. It was about accountability. It was about whether the WNBA was doing enough to protect its stars, or whether it had let dangerous behavior slip through the cracks for too long. And as the outrage grew louder, attention turned squarely to the one person at the heart of it all, Bria Hartley. By now, it wasn't just about Sophie or even Bria Hartley. The firestorm had spread to the league itself. Fans were no longer whispering their frustration. They were shouting it, and their message was brutal. The WNBA had failed. Referees became the first target. Clips of missed calls flooded timelines, fans mocking officials as clowns who couldn't control a game if their lives depended on it. How could Hartley get away with repeated dangerous fouls? How could Sophie's injury happen without a single real consequence? To many, it looked like the referees were blind, or worse, indifferent. Then came the bigger question. Where was the league? Kathy Engelbert, the commissioner, faced growing criticism for staying silent while stars kept dropping like flies. Fans were furious that the same league pushing to grow its audience couldn't even protect the players it was promoting as the future. It escalated quickly. Some fans went as far as demanding a civil rights investigation into WNBA officiating, claiming the lack of accountability was putting careers and lives at risk. Think about that for a second. Basketball fans so outraged that they were calling for government-level oversight. That's how broken they believed things had become. The injury to Sophie Cunningham wasn't being viewed as a fluke anymore. It was being seen as proof of a league spiraling out of control. Each missed call, each ignored foul, every player left writhing on the floor without justice added to the growing sense that something was deeply wrong. And just when it felt like things couldn't get any worse, another harsh reality hit home. The Fever weren't just losing Sophie, they had already been missing the one player who was supposed to save them all. Caitlin Clark. While Sophie Cunningham's injury sent shockwaves through the league, another shadow had already been looming over the Fever. Caitlin Clark, the most hyped rookie in WNBA history, had barely been on the court. She was supposed to be the savior, the player who would put the Fever back on the map and bring millions of new fans into the game. Instead, she spent most of the season on the sidelines, injured, watching the chaos unfold. For Fever fans, it was crushing. They weren't just losing games. They were losing the very hope they had been promised. Every highlight package, every viral moment the league expected from Caitlin never came. And for the WNBA, it was even worse. How could you market the face of the future when she wasn't even playing? Fans began asking the hard question, should Caitlin even come back this season? Why risk further injury in a league that clearly couldn't protect its stars? Sophie Cunningham had just gone down. Others had too. And the officials weren't stepping in. If the WNBA couldn't guarantee safety for its biggest names, then what was the point of putting Caitlin back on the court? The Fever, once positioned as the team to watch, were left without Sophie's leadership and without Caitlin's firepower. Instead of a season of rebirth, it had turned into a season of collapse. Playoff hopes were slipping away, and all anyone could talk about was injuries, dirty plays, and a league that looked more broken by the day. And as fans kept asking if Caitlin would risk her career to return, another question loomed even larger. With their stars gone and their season in ruins, how could the Fever possibly survive? With Sophie Cunningham sidelined and Caitlin Clark barely touching the floor all season, the Indiana Fever were left facing a brutal question. What happens now? Because without their leaders, without their spark, this team didn't just look vulnerable, they looked finished. Sophie was more than just a player. She was the glue that kept the roster together. Her energy, her toughness, her willingness to throw herself into every possession gave the Fever a fighting chance even on their worst nights. Losing her wasn't just about missing points or rebounds, it was about losing the heart of the team. Caitlin, meanwhile, was supposed to be the future. She was the one fans bought tickets to see, the player who could change everything with a single shot. But her absence left the Fever looking like a team without direction. Instead of building around two cornerstones, they were left scrambling to even put together a competitive lineup. Fans saw it, analysts saw it. Even the players on the bench seemed to know what was coming. This wasn't just a rough patch, it was the collapse of a season. Playoff dreams evaporated. Games became blowouts, and instead of hope, all that was left was frustration and anger. The Fever weren't just battling opponents anymore, they were battling their own reality. A roster in shambles, stars in street clothes, and a reputation as the league's biggest disappointment. And as each game passed, the whispers grew louder. Could this team even recover from a season like this? But the truth is, this wasn't just about one team's nightmare. This was about the league itself. Because if the WNBA couldn't protect its stars, then what future did it really have? By the time Sophie Cunningham was ruled out and Caitlin Clark remained sidelined, it became impossible to ignore the bigger picture. This wasn't just about the Fever's collapse. It was about the WNBA itself staring down a credibility crisis. Fans weren't asking for small fixes anymore. They were questioning whether the league could survive if its biggest names kept falling. Every missed call, every reckless foul, and every silence from leadership chipped away at trust. People didn't just want change, they demanded it. The conversation grew louder with each passing week. Was the WNBA serious about protecting its athletes, or was it more interested in chasing headlines while ignoring the danger on the court? Families of players were speaking out. Fans were threatening to turn away, and players themselves were left wondering if they could trust the system meant to protect them. For the Fever, the season already looked over. But the real question wasn't whether Indiana could recover. It was whether the league itself could stop the bleeding. Could the WNBA fix its officiating? Could it hold players accountable for dirty play? Could it prove to fans and athletes that it valued safety as much as growth? Because without those answers, the future looks shaky. Sophie Cunningham is gone, Caitlin Clark is barely present, stars across the league are battling injuries, and fans are losing patience. So now the question that hangs in the air is simple but heavy. Can Caitlin Clark risk her career to save this league, or will she stay on the sidelines and let the WNBA face the wreckage it created? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because this story isn't finished, and what comes next could change everything.